What do CEOs need to know about sales these days? A lot. Outdated sales strategies and tactics plague most companies today. Listen to what innovative CEOs and experts have to say about how to change all that with Sales Talk for CEOs. Welcome to Sales Talk for CEOs. I'm excited today because I'm going to be able to tell all of those CEOs out there and everybody who supports CEOs that are listening about an easier way to be the best salesperson, right? And I know every CEO wants more of the best salespeople on their team. Every sales leader wants more top sellers. But today it's gotten even harder than ever. We've got so many aspects to look at, and the buyers have changed so much in their behavior. We still make decisions the same way, right? But our behavior has changed so much as buyers, and our sellers are really ill-equipped to tackle that, especially when they're going out cold. Now, you've all heard me on so many podcasts talking about get an introduction. It is the way to go, right? Rather than cold outreach. But a lot of people are just saying, how? I don't know how to get an introduction. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to know who knows the people that I want to know. Yeah, big problem. But guess what? The former #1 seller from Salesforce.com is here with me today to tell you how to do it. And I'm so excited because I've been using the product that his company has built and making tons of great introductions. And I'm so glad I got him on the show today. Welcome, Drew.
Alice, thank you so much. Really an honor to be here, and thank you for being a great user of Connect the Dots too.
Yes, absolutely. So Connect the Dots is the tool that I'm talking about, and we'll have everything in the show notes for you. But all right, Drew, before we jump into your founder story, just tell everyone, what is Connect the Dots and what does it do and who do you sell it to?
Yeah, so Connect the Dots came out of an idea that was born from the early days of Salesforce. I was there very early on from 1999 until 2010. And I had the luck of sitting next to Marc Benioff, so I could ask Marc for introductions. And they turned out to be gold, when I could get Marc to make an introduction for me to somebody that he knew that was relevant at a target account. Then we would get the meeting. There's a really high probability that we get an opportunity, and that opportunity would close. And so I did that over and over and over in my career when I was at Salesforce, and then beyond with the other companies that I worked with subsequently. And but I always realized, like, there are so many stones left unturned in our network that you just can't see who really knows who. And it'd be amazing if we could somehow build a technology that would do that, that would turn over all those stones and show you the very best paths to the best relationships, to the decision makers and the influencers at the deals that you want to sell. So we built that. That's what we did. And there are a lot of interesting technical details about how we've done it. But long story short, it's the best way for you as a company to see who you collectively know and how well you collectively know those people, so you can get a targeted introduction right to that person.
Okay, wow. So this is like a dream come true. Uh, and I already know because I've used it so many times. So who can buy this? Who do you sell it to?
Yep. Well, for you, Alice, it's free. And for everybody on the planet, actually, you can go set up a free account, and it's amazing. You'll get a lot of value out of it. The companies that we sell to primarily they're all B2B companies, really, companies that have B2B sales organizations, and companies of any size could really benefit from it. Our focus is on companies that have at least, call it 200 or 300 employees, up to thousands of employees, because their networks are bigger, and selfishly, like, they're bigger companies, so we can sell it to them for more. but
Yeah.
but really, but really, any company can get value from it.
Yeah. Well, I'm a tiny little company and I get great benefit from it. And I know the people who know me that are in Connect the
Mhm.
Dots because they can see who I know and they can ask me directly, hey, can you introduce me? So it works out great for my clients to be connected because I'm connected and then I can help them make introductions. And yes, you can see some of this on LinkedIn, but nowhere near like what we're talking about. So we'll dive into that a little bit more in a minute. But I know everyone wants to hear your founder story. So before you started the company, right before that, like, what were you doing?
Mhm.
And how did this come to? I mean, it was an idea, right? You knew it worked because you were doing it, but how did it come to be a company?
Yep. Yeah, I knew the motion worked because we had done that so much at Salesforce. And frankly, I was the number one individual contributor. Later, I was the sales manager. I was the number one sales manager globally. And I felt like I cheated to accomplish that. And the cheat code was figuring out whether it was Marc Benioff or one of our other executives or a customer of ours or a family member or my neighbor knew somebody that we wanted to sell to. And then I used that relationship to get in the room with that person. But it wasn't cheating. It's just like what you should do. But it felt like it.
Well, wait, it's not just what you should do, it's what the buyers want too, right?
Mhm.
No buyer wants another email in their inbox. No
Nope.
buyer wants another cold call. No buyer wants somebody they don't know and don't trust and don't know their product
Yeah.
calling them. So, like, why not do it the easy way and go through someone who already has a credibility established, can introduce you? Like, the buyer
Yes.
likes it better too.
Everybody loves it. Trust is the thing that's lacking. We've destroyed trust with all of our outbound sales prospecting efforts over the course of the past decade. And Alice, we know a lot of the people who are fundamentally responsible for that. And we all did it. And frankly, we all still do it, like to some
Well, it
degree. There are a
worked
lot.
for a minute, Drew. It
Yep.
worked for a minute. It did,
Yep.
right? But
Totally.
that minute's gone. I mean,
Yes.
it worked for a minute.
Yep, 100%. So we knew that basically the fundamental human thing that we're tapping into here is trust. Do I know you? Do I trust you? And because of that, am I going to give my attention to you and then reply to you and take what you have to say seriously? And so trust is it takes a long time to build trust, and it takes an instant to destroy it, right? So it's a really precious thing, and we knew that this would work because it does work. Now, the question was, how do we build a network that shows all the trusted relationships? And I say trusted relationships. So to differentiate between like LinkedIn, if you're connected on LinkedIn, that does not indicate that you have a trusted relationship. Now, LinkedIn's great. I mean, it is an amazing platform to see everybody in the world and to tap into what they're doing and understand what's on their minds and see the people that you could potentially sell to. But there's this trust layer that's missing, and that's what Connect the Dots brings. And the trust is it shows who actually knows each other based on their historical communication history. So when you set up a Connect the Dots account, we actually can measure that Alice and Drew have communicated a lot, and therefore they know each other well, right? And that's the trick, and that sits on top of your LinkedIn graph, and it also extends beyond your LinkedIn graph, so that you can see who all these people are that know each other.
Okay,
Now,
so I'm
oh,
going to take you
sorry.
back a little bit more. So, okay, so were you still at Salesforce when you were like, "Hey, this could be like a product"?
I knew I went off on a big tangent there. So no, I was at Salesforce until 2010. So I've been
Okay.
gone for a while. So I left, and I did a number of other things. I started another company. I traveled the world for a while. I learned how to speak Spanish poorly. Don't test me; it's really bad. And sail and go surfing. And picked up a bunch of hobbies. And then I ran sales for a company in New York. I did a bunch of different things. Now, after I'd run sales for this company in New York, and we had done this play, we called it CXO, which meant leveraging our executives to get to the chief whatever officer at companies by leveraging warm relationships. And actually, there was a guy that was really instrumental in this, who is a friend, is a good friend today, and he's a real great supporter. He's got a somewhat unfortunate name. His name is Jeff Epstein, and it's
Oh,
not that one. It's the Jeff Epstein who he was formerly the CFO of Oracle, and now he's at Bessemer Venture Partners, and he's a great guy. And so we leveraged. He was on our board, or an investor at this company, Rocket Trip, where I was running sales. And we leveraged his relationship to get to all these incredible CFOs. So we landed deals at companies like Citibank and Credit Suisse and John Deere, and largely based on his ability to open the door for us because people knew who he was. And so I that's when I operationalized that motion the most. We just, at scale, we tried to figure out how we leverage all of his relationships and all of our other executives and all of our other board members, and then the realization that, like, this is a lot better, but this is still very manual. We know we're missing so many relationships. The vast majority of the relationships we're not seeing yet. Is there some way that we could possibly make this automatic so that you just turn it on for your company and then you get everything?
Yeah.
And that's when I had the realization, and this was going back long enough that AI had not come on strong
Mm.
yet. AI was still a little bit out in the future, but we realized that we could analyze historical email communication, and from that we could develop a graph of all these relationships with strengths associated between people, and that was the origin story. And then I took that to I used my relationships. I had a relationship with a venture investor in San Francisco, a guy named Matt Holleran, and he had a fund that was for cloud applications, and we are going to build a cloud application to do this. And I stopped by his office and I said, hey, I have a thing that I think could be really big, and I want to share it with you. And I wasn't even really necessarily committed to starting a company yet, but I thought he should hear this. And he heard it and he's like, that is absolutely a killer, and the world needs this thing. So then we got our funding, and that was the origin story. That's when I was like, okay, game on. We have funding for this, and we got a great vision. And so we pulled the team together, and we were off to the races. So I think that is my founder origin story.
So what year was that approximately?
That was 2019.
Okay, so not
Yep.
that long ago.
Nope.
And so interesting. So you were working at a company. Did you immediately leave or did you just start
Hmm.
assembling your team or like what did that look like?
So I'd been working at Rocket Trip, and I left Rocket Trip. So I left Rocket Trip, and I'd taken about a year off. I've done one
Oh.
thing that I've done different in my life than I think a lot of people is I've had a lot of big breaks between
Mm.
things. So I'm kind of this. I was explaining this to somebody yesterday. I am 100% on, or I'm 0% on. I'm a really bad consultant. Don't hire me to be a consultant. I can't do it. I can't be like, 10% on or 20% on as a consultant might be. So Rocket Trip it had a really interesting idea. We unfortunately never got the product market fit. So we sold these big deals, but we could not renew these big deals. So I left, and I was thinking about what the next opportunity was going to be for me. And I took about a year or so before, and I thought about, actually at that point, I thought about the crypto space because that was pretty hot, and I thought about blockchain technologies that could be used for the enterprise. But the thing that kept calling me back was this idea that we do not know the trusted relationships that we all have at our disposal. And the more I looked at it, and the more I looked at the technology existed to make this possible, but nobody had done it. And I was like, this is inevitable. This has to happen. So then at that point, I knew I was 100% on. I couldn't not do it. There was no option other than to go do this. So that's when I started the company, and we were off to the races.
Yeah, so tell us about how you gathered your team because you knew what you wanted to do. You probably didn't you're not a coder, I don't think anyway. You didn't know how you were going to build
Not a
this
good
thing.
one. Yeah.
Right? And so what did that look like? You started gathering people. Obviously, had a great network to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so I tapped into three people as co-founders, and Luca, Ian, and Noah. And this was kind of a fun story because it's Silicon Valley, right? Uh, my next door neighbor was Noah, and he and I would go bicycling all the time. And he's a great kind of he's a good engineer, he's a good entrepreneur, he's a good designer, he's kind of a jack of all trades. A really great guy to have on your team as a co-founder. And we just were bicycling in San Francisco, biking up to the top of the hill over the Golden Gate Bridge and talking about this idea. He got excited. I got excited. He said, "Hey, could I help you just prototype it? Because I'm really excited about it." I was like, "Absolutely." And then I tapped into Ian, who is he and I used to work together at Salesforce. So I was, one of the very first salespeople there. He was the first designer at Salesforce and ran design at Salesforce. So much of whether you love it or hate Salesforce, much of that is his job, what he designed, he built for you. And so I tapped into Ian, and I was like, Ian, this is Salesforce, you know what salespeople need. Doesn't it sound like the thing that we all need? And he's like, absolutely, I'm in. And then last but not least was our co-founder Luca. And Luca, I knew I'll tell the abbreviated story, but Luca I knew from my previous startup. He worked for my previous CTO. He was a young guy at that point, but very sharp, and he's a very entrepreneurial thinker. He's based in Serbia. So I did another startup, and we were based in Serbia and in San Francisco. So I got to know him pretty well, and I said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. Here's the team, Noah and Ian. What do you think? Do you want to jump on board and help us out. And he said, I actually said I was in Serbia. Knew I was going to be partnering with somebody in Serbia to do this. And I said, how long until you could be in San Francisco with us and we could start writing code? And he said, I could pack my things and be at the airport in about 90 minutes if you want. And that was it. And then
Wow.
I said, take a couple of days, pack your stuff up, say goodbye to, your mom and your family, and then come on over. So then we got to work. He flew over and he flew to San Francisco. We all basically used my condo in San Francisco, and the dining or the kitchen island. That was our conference room, and we just got to work and started prototyping, started getting our first alpha customers to give us feedback on it, and then it just kept evolving from there.
Wow. Sounds like it was a lot of fun in the beginning, everybody digging in
It
and working
was
together. I love it. So, how long was it before you started, if not selling, but socializing the idea to your network? Like, hey, I'm building this thing.
Mhm.
You think you'd want it? Like how did tell us how that all occurred?
Immediately, basically. So the first thing you need to do is go test your ideas on people, and you know, I have a lot of thoughts about this. Now that we've gone through all the evolutions that we have as a company, but so immediately we're getting feedback from people. Would you use this if we built this? We'd make a mock design that didn't work, but you could click on it and then it would advance to the next frame. So they could give us feedback on it. So we did that. And one of the things that we found that was very hard about our specific product is we're assembling all of the world's data into a graph of relationships. So that Alice and Drew have a strong relationship, and Alice and somebody else have a strong relationship, and so Drew can now ask Alice for an introduction to that person. It's very, very hard. It's a very messy, massive data problem, and it actually took us years to solve. So at first, the first prototype when we launched it and we showed it to people, and it was actually functioning. We're like, okay, see if this works. Do you like this? And they're like, yes, but the data's wrong.
Mm,
Almost all the data is wrong. Call it like 70% of the data is wrong, and it's just a very hard problem to solve, that data problem. And so we kept chipping away at it, chipping away at it, chipping away at it, and got to the point where now the data is 99 point something percent right. It's never going to be 100% right because we're taking in all this data and we're analyzing it and saying, does this represent Alice, who she is, all the information about her and how and who she's connected to? There's a probabilistic matching element to it, which we've shrunk down to massively wrong to just a little bit wrong. And so that problem took a long time to solve. And then that was the main thing that we had to figure out before we got to testing the real features on customers and users to see, is this helpful for you? Can you get introductions directly to the CEOs at the companies that you want to sell to? And so when we solved the data problem, then we started solving the usability problems, because the data now is great and the network is great, but there are still some usability challenges, which is why, like, we really still to this day, even though we have a free product that individuals can sign up for, and it's really amazing, it's a ton of value for nothing, for $0. But we are not a real PLG motion company. We're a sales led motion, in part because we can get directly to the CEOs and CROs and the VPs of sales and VPs of marketing of these companies, because we use our product. It's great. We actually don't have the problem that everybody else has. Everybody else, the problem is they can't get in the room. We can get in the room. That's actually not a problem for us. But the usability of the tool to make it so that this very complex graph of relationships is simple enough to set up and use and not scary, so everybody understands how their data is working for them and not working against them. That's one of the bigger challenges that's still out there for us in order to make it a truly PLG product that individuals can sign up for and adopt.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it does look a bit like it's a product led growth because you can go and sign up. I can send anyone a link and they can
Mhm.
go sign up, or they can stop by your website and they can sign up. But it's interesting because I think we were talking right before this, and I mentioned that one of my clients has a similar issue where it seemingly is product led growth, and people can sign themselves up,
Mhm.
but they never actually get that user adoption and people paying unless
Yeah,
there is a salesperson involved. And so it's really interesting. I mean, I think there are some products out there that are truly product led growth, but I think
for
most
sure.
of them are like start with product led, but then sales assisted to get us over to the next level, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is the hardest problem is making it simple, right?
Yes.
Simplicity is hard. That's the irony of simplicity. So, how do you make PLG really work and be friction free, and people understand the value, and all their questions are answered, and they're compelled to, keep clicking through to the next step? That's really hard, and you got to keep chipping away at it, chipping away at it. And I think there are a lot of companies out there that they can evolve into PLG over
Mhm.
time, but you got to keep thinking of it like an experiment. You're constantly running the experiment
Right.
and figuring out what's working to think of it like a funnel. How many people are going into the top? How many are getting through it and coming out the bottom and become users, engaged, active users like you want? And you gotta. It's not simple, but if you get it right, then you can become a massively successful company. Like,
Yeah.
we adopted Figma long time when we started the company. Figma was new at that point. It was not the standard thing that everybody is using for design in companies. And but we decided, hey, we're going to be spread out geographically, and we think this is going to let us collaborate a lot better. And Figma was at that point, they did a good job. It was easy to adopt, and we could all get through the process. Now look at it, Figma's huge, massive company because they cracked the code on that.
They did.
So,
They
yeah,
did. Yeah. That makes so much sense. All right. Well, let's talk about how the sales happened then. So it was a couple of years before you really got it where you thought, okay, now we can actually charge people for this. I mean, people were
yep,
adopting and starting to get on. Yes, I got it. About what year do you think it was when you were like, okay, we're ready? Like we can go charge people for this?
yeah. About 2 years ago, I think the first sale we made was sometime about 2 years ago, and we had companies that had deployed this under like a design partner program that we hadn't
Mhm.
charged them for it. But then we were like, okay, about 2 years ago, like we think we are doing enough value consistently here that we know we can charge for it.
So did you start up a sales team at that point, or were you like, okay, I'll just go do the selling because that's what I know how to do. And
Yeah.
when we get to a certain point, then we'll start hiring a sales team. Or tell us how
I did
that
it.
went.
Yeah, I did it all myself at first,
Yeah.
and until I could figure out that this is a repeatable. If I don't know how to repeat the process, then I don't know how to hire somebody else and tell them how to repeat the process.
So I'm going to
So,
pause you there for a second because I think that is so important for founders to hear, right? And some founders do founder led sales longer than others, and some of the founders I know are back to founder led sales for a
mhm,
variety of good reasons, right?
yep,
And I think it's important because some founders want to hurry up and hire salespeople, and I get it, especially if they've never done sales in their life and it's just not their thing, right? But it just doesn't make any sense usually because you don't know the motion. You don't know
mhm,
the sales motion. You're going to hire somebody to do what? They're going to make up their own motion. It may not be the right motion. They don't know what
mhm.
to do. They don't get any results. You don't know why. So I think it's really important. So I want to really hear about this part of it. So you're like, okay, I know how to sell. I've been in sales. My other founders are doing their thing. So I'm going to go out and do this. What did that look
Mhm.
like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of this was happening in Belgrade, Serbia, strangely, because we decided during COVID that we could hire anywhere in the world at that point because everybody was. Oh, sorry. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just my Bluetooth did something weird over
Oh,
here.
you're fine.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We decided during COVID that everybody was just basically a box in a Zoom meeting, and so we didn't have to hire people in San Francisco anymore necessarily because we weren't going to meet together. So we started hiring more and more people in Belgrade, and so when then after COVID kind of cooled off and we were selling, uh, we had a critical mass of people in Belgrade, right? Engineers, designers, product people, all that kind of stuff, support. And so I spent a lot of time over there, and I'd spend late nights in Belgrade because I wanted to be close to the engineering team, the product team, the support team. I wanted to hear everything. I wanted them to hear me. I wanted them to hear, just in the room. I wanted them to hear the sales calls so they could understand what was happening. And because that sharing of information is amazing. And I have very fond memories of the early days of Salesforce when everybody at Salesforce was in one room and we could hear everything and see everything that was going on. And the learning was so fast then. And so it's important not just for how do you sell, it's important for what product you're going to build and what customer problems are arising that you need to solve, all this stuff. So So yeah, I was spending a lot of late nights because I was 9 hours time zone ahead from San Francisco, and I would have a lot of Zoom calls, and I would do the pitch, and I would get the feedback, and I'd close some deals or I'd not close some deals, and then all of that went into our kind of collective neural network to understand what worked and what didn't work. And then when it worked well enough, and we had like a machine going, then we hired a couple of young AEs in Belgrade, which is a little odd, but we did it. We found some really very talented young people who were either native English speakers or near native English speakers. Like one guy grew up in Michigan, one gal grew up in Florida, but they were there in Belgrade. They were Serbian by ancestry, and then we taught them the approach, and then they gradually would take the training wheels off as we would do calls
Mhm.
together. And
Yeah.
this is kind of what I would do with like Marc Benioff at Salesforce. We'd do a sales call together, and he would lead it. He would lead the conversation with the senior executive from whatever company, and I'm just watching and learning like soaking it all up like a
Mhm.
sponge. And then I would basically try to replicate Mark and do what he did, and it worked. It worked really well. Mark's a great salesperson. So we did the same thing here. So we had kind of this apprenticeship where we would do sales calls together, and then I would gradually do less and less and less and less of the sales call until there's this vanishing point, and poof, I'm gone. And then the training wheels are off, and like, you guys go and do this, and call me if you need me. But now you are now certified to go run that sales process yourself. And so I think that's there are when you become a much more mature company and you do boot camps and you've got layers of
Yeah.
management and you've got training curricula and all this stuff, there are other ways to do this at scale. But I think at the scale that we were at that point, then that was the way to do it.
Oh, I still think today, honestly, I think if we were smarter in big companies where there are hundreds or thousands of salespeople and we paired people up, the new people get paired with a senior person, can you imagine how much faster
Yes.
everyone would learn? Plus, you see the senior salesperson and the gravitas that they have and the way that they build a relationship and why they can get in the doors that they can get in, because as a young person, you don't have that. You don't know that, right? And it
Yeah.
takes you years to
Yeah.
learn it. But if you can watch someone like you watched
Mhm.
Mark and go, oh, I get this. I get,
Yeah.
okay, faster than, okay, let me train you up. Here's some product knowledge. Here's some industry knowledge, maybe the tiniest bit on who you're calling on. Go ahead, go start calling people. And the failure rate is just massive. And it's so discouraging all the way around, right? So I feel like it's the right way, whether you're just starting or whether you're a big company, that mentorship, right? You stayed with them until they were ready to do it on their own. You didn't just throw them out. Good luck, go do whatever you end up doing. Well, I guess if your salespeople are dispensable and you hire 10 and keep 5, I guess that method works. But oh my gosh, I really don't think anyone can afford to do that anymore. And just what a gift to give this young seller, right?
Yeah.
This mature person who been there, done that, knows how, can really help you and maybe make some introductions along the way, right? So
Yes.
I love that. I'm just curious, like, how much of this did you document, or did you document? Did you use video or just text
Mm.
documents, so that you knew eventually you're going to need more salespeople than this, because I'm sure you have more
Mhm.
now, right? But how did
Yep.
you do that transfer of information?
Well, so how we did it and how we're doing it now, I'll kind of tell you the basket of
Yeah, the
things.
growth to
So
that. Yeah.
yeah. So initially it was all live, doing it together. Let's do it together, and then gradually give that person, the opportunity to perform that piece of the sales call and the sales process until they show mastery of it. Now we're scaling up a bit more, and so we do call recording, and we look at calls, and we'll say, we'll go through and coach and say, this is you shouldn't have said this here, or here's a better way to position this, or there's a question that you didn't ask, or here's an objection that we should have handled differently. So that's really important. We also we use call recording, and we're in the process of getting this stood up. We're using something called Momentum.io that looks pretty cool so far. So it does call recording, and it will populate your Salesforce instance. And so it can populate if you've got a sales methodology and you want to make sure that you ask certain questions, get certain answers to move through each stage of the sales process. It'll automate populating that for you. So, and there, it's not the only one out there, but there are, that's a really, that's an interesting thing that I think is going to make it a lot easier to give coaching and then to inspect precisely where there are issues and then resolve those issues. What else we do? We do recordings of the product. We will do recordings of product experts internally. We record them and then share them with our team when they're onboarding. Um, we have a one. This is a little. We're not a big fancy company yet. We're about 60 people or something. So I'm not too embarrassed about this. But it actually is really simple. We have a Google Doc
Yeah,
that we call the AE checklist.
there you
And
go.
whenever we think of something, we got like, here's what you should do every day. Here's what you should do every week. Here's what you should do every month. Here's what you should do every quarter. Here's what you should do before sales calls. Here's what you should do after sales calls. Here's what you should do, whatever. Like in all the different scenarios where you might have, there's a thing that you should do. We have a checklist for it. And so it's really simple. It's just long. And then you just, go through it and read it and grok that it's there. And then before, each day, I'm a big checklist fan, frankly. It's really simple. If you're gonna fly to the moon and land on the moon and then fly back to Earth and land safely on Earth, there are a lot of checklists that those astronauts are using because there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. And so I'm a believer in checklists, and I'm a believer in putting this checklist on your calendar. So every morning at whatever 6:30 a.m., do your daily checklist. Every once a week on Saturday morning, do your weekly checklist. Once a month on Saturdays, do your monthly checklist,
Yes.
and then reference back to that that checklist, and have that be a living document. It's not like we all know everything that needs to be done, but as soon as I think of something that needs to be on there, I put it on there, and anybody else in the team can go in there and suggest new things that should be added to the checklist.
Yeah,
Those are some of the things we do.
I love it. I think it's great. I mean, it's a playbook, you got it on a Google Doc. It's a playbook and it's a living document.
Mhm.
It's always updating itself because the humans go, "Oh, I found a better way," or "I think we should add this," or "Oops, that's too
Yes.
many steps." And that really is what it should be like because sales is an iterative process, right? And our buyers are changing, as I mentioned earlier in the show.
Yep.
They're changing their behavior and we have to change with it. So what worked 2
Hmm.
years ago, might not work today. And we've got to be noticing that
Hmm.
and making sure that we're updating our checklist to match it. Like, don't keep doing this.
Absolutely.
It's not working. That's crazy, right? I think that's part of the problem right now. We got a lot of outdated playbooks out there, and they're not being updated as they go. So I actually really appreciate that method, and I think that's awesome. All right, so here you are today. You've been selling for 2 years. It's a great product. We know. I mean, I know personally because I use it, and I've been able to make a lot of introductions for people through there. So what's next for you guys? You mentioned, hey, yeah, it's a little product led, but really we got to have sales in there.
Yep.
What does the future look like?
Yeah. I mean, the future is right now, scale up our sales-led growth. So we're hiring AEs. So if you're listening to this and you're a great AE and you're excited about this opportunity space, please contact me because we're hiring. Particularly, we're hiring ideally in San Francisco, but we'll also hire in other locations around the country. So we're scaling up the sales team to go to market. And in parallel, we're running those experimental cycles on the PLG side to make it so that it's self-serve and that smaller companies, like, if you're a 50-person company, you can get a lot of value out of Connect the Dots. We just don't want to have a salesperson
Right.
spend a lot of time with you.
Makes sense.
Sorry. I mean,
Yeah,
apologies
don't
to
apologize. It makes
yeah.
perfect sense.
Yes, yes. So we want to
Yeah,
make that really easy for individuals to start adopting it in a company, and then a
yeah,
company to be able to turn on the team edition, which doesn't exist yet, but we're working on that this year, so that you can self-serve, turn on the team edition, and use it for your own small or mid-sized company. So those are two of the main things. We got a lot. I mean, there's so much stuff that we want to do with this product. It's so exciting that all the different directions we can take it. But those are kind of the two big thrusts right now.
yeah. Great. All right. Well, before we part ways, it's been great. Really enjoyed talking to you. But I have three questions I want to ask you
Mhm.
real quick. And the first one is, what's a book that you think every CEO should read?
Well, Strategic Selling by Miller Hyman for sure is like number one.
Thank you.
Uh, and by the way, very early in my sales career, that was one of the very first books I read, and still it still sticks with me today. I mean, that's in my core DNA. So that's one. I think for me, if you're in technology, some of the classics like Crossing the Chasm
Yeah.
and Innovator's Dilemma are two big ones that they're in my brain. I think about those all the time. Um, and there are a lot of other. And Zero to One is a really great one that's more
Yeah.
recent. So if I had to pick, do I have to pick one?
Well,
If
it's
I,
okay.
I'll pick one. I'll say Crossing the Chasm.
Okay, great. Love it. All right. What's a podcast you listen to because it makes you think differently? Doesn't have to be a business podcast.
Yeah. I I'm a little bit light on my podcast these days. I have done a lot of podcast listening in the past. I would say one of my favorites is Hardcore History. I don't know if do you ever listen to that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just filled in a lot of blanks for me that I didn't know. I really love it. So I'm kind of a history buff, and I couldn't imagine that I would listen to like 14 hours of narration about, I don't know, Genghis Khan's conquests or whatever, but I did. It was really, it really made me see the world in a very different way.
Yeah, it is. We do have a very narrow view here in the US, right, of our
Mhm.
history and the world history. Very narrow. So I think it's helpful to understand yourself, your community, your country, right, the world,
Mhm.
just getting some more history from some other perspectives besides what you were taught in school. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that's definitely a good one. All right, last question. What does every CEO need to know to win in this marketplace?
it's all about trust. You got to figure out your trusted relationships and how you put them to work for you. So, and I the I guess the way I would also put this is you should turn your entire company into a selling machine.
Yes.
Everybody in your company should be in sales.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely. I mean, you're missing out because everybody at your company knows somebody, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Everybody has the opportunity to say something favorable about your company. Everyone in your company has the opportunity to post something favorable or share an idea, help each other connect. There's so much there that you're missing out on if you are not. And I think the trust thing is so crucial because when we are cold calling and cold emailing, we are not building trust at all. And we're sitting here as CEOs wondering, why can't these salespeople break in? Why can't,
Mhm.
why can't they hit their goals? Why? Because they need trust and they don't have it when they're forced to just have cold entry, right? Trying, add volume to get someone to pay attention to them. There's no trust there. So yeah, we've got to help them with our networks and everyone else's networks. We've got to help these salespeople get these introductions.
Absolutely. Well put.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Tell us, where can people find you?
That's easy. Just go to our website, ctd.ai.
All right. And yes, you can sign yourself up. And if you do want to connect with Drew on LinkedIn, you know the rule. You have to tell him that you heard him on my show. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.